Hey guys, what's up? And today I have a cool 3D printing video for you. We're going to go over the Open Flywheel Project's 3D printed shotgun Cyclone shock turret. That's a mouthful. But basically, this is a product that I forget who originally brought it to market, but this is a free and open source version. So I decided to print it and give it a shot for myself. Originally it came in 2 halves, however they just released the file for the full one, so I figured it'd be as good a time as any to try it out. Like I said, this goes in the Cyclone shock, so I'm just going to use this one, which I modified a while ago. I'll probably keep the turret and put it in another one. I'm actually a fan of Mega Darts, so I want to keep this turret because it turned out pretty cool from a previous mod with the triangle pattern, and I just think it looks kind of cool. But for now, since it's the only one I have on hand and I really want to try this out, I'm going to throw it in here. Now, to use this, you're going to have to modify the shell a bit because where the Mega Dart fits through, 3 darts will not. So we're going to have to make a small cut probably here, right after where the turret meets with the shell and it's held in place in the front. And then probably we'll follow this line like right about here just to get a nice clean front. We're just going to, take all that off. We're not going to deal with, dremeling out the middle. We're just going to make it look as clean as possible. Okay, now I'm super happy with how my printer has been performing recently. I did a few upgrades, and I think I've honed it in pretty nicely, at least for PLA prints like this one. The layer height is extremely consistent, and it looks fantastic. The only issue I really had is a slight amount of stringing in some of the barrels, as you can see like there. So what I'm going to do is I have a 1/2-inch drill bit in this drill. I'm going to go on the slowest setting. We're going to lower the torque a bit just so that I don't grind any of these posts out, and I might actually just drill in reverse just to get rid of the larger debris. And then I'm going to go in after with this pencil that I put some lighter to medium grit sandpaper on, and then I'm just going to go through and really make sure it's shooting well and the barrels are fairly consistent. That's it's really the only complaint I have about 3D printed parts is the dart fit, just from being multiple layers in the upwards direction generally, can be minorly inconsistent with dart fit. So I'm going to just try to go over that with sort of a fine-tooth comb. It'll take a while, but in the long run it'll pay off in getting a better performing blaster. Now, another thing is to remember is you don't want to sand out too much because you can never really add that material back in. So I'm going to do a little bit of sanding, check for dart fit, a little more sanding until every barrel is good. Like I said, it'll take a while, but the finished result should really pay off. One mistake on my part while printing this was I used the wrong type of support, and this is basically, I don't know if you can see that, but it's fairly solid, so I'm going to have a hard time removing and cleaning out that spot where the rotation mechanism goes in. So just a note, that's an error on my part, not with the design. I should have used a lighter type of support. Okay, so now my hole is all cleaned out. Okay, so now that that's all cleaned out, I should be able to put in the rotation mech. I might need to do a slight bit of sanding, but for right now it's pretty good. I'm going to crack open my Cyclone shock and we'll get started with installing this. Okay, so I've already removed some of the internal components for this, but it's important to note that the air restrictor has been removed for this one. I think that it might have a hard time. I can't confirm, but being that the layout of the darts is different and the dart size is different, and now there's 3 barrels instead of 1, instead of trying to... I'm not sure if the air restrictor would work by hitting that middle section here or not, but it won't work regardless because it'll always be depressed, so I would just remove it just to avoid potential problems. So now we're just going to remove this cylinder and put the new one. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but you could actually see that it lines up pretty darn well. And then the plunger goes up and makes the seal connection with the turret, so I think we're in good shape here. The only thing I've noticed is that when you put it back into the shell, this section might be a little too long, so I might have to trim that down a hair. However, I have to trim parts of the shell anyway, so that's not really a big deal. As also mentioned previously, we need to do some shell modification. The darts, as you can see, don't line up with that hole in the front, so in order to alleviate that issue, I'm just going to make a trim we're going to cut off sort of right above where the nub goes in here in the front and holds it in, and probably like right about there. We're just going to, you know, take all that off. It's probably, you know, the cleanest way to do it because we need to remove this section, and I don't want to just leave a huge hole in the shell. So we're going to do some slight trimming to this front area, so that way we don't have problems with the darts hitting into it. Okay, I'll show you in a second when it's back together, but the shell trimming in the front section, as you could tell, is done. Here, there used to be another section there. I've replaced the cylinder, as you can also tell, and the internals are back in place. So I'm going to put this thing back together, and then we'll go do some testing. Okay, here's what the blaster looks like put together. The shell modification went pretty well. I just sort of rounded that out so that the bottom dart will never get in the way of this. If I was to, you know, use this all the time, I would probably just do a bit of gap filling around here and smooth it out, just to give it a rounded appearance, and then maybe fill up this little area up here. But for right now, it's fine. Just wanted to do this as sort of a quick project. I've loaded it up with elite darts, which seem to fire the best, but I'll go over that in a bit later. Let's do a quick firing demonstration. So yeah, that was a quick firing demonstration. As you can see, the grouping is fairly consistent, but also can be a little sporadic. I think that has a lot to do with how the dart fit is. What I've noticed is you really want to try to match the groups of 3 darts specifically with how well they fit. Like you want to have, you know, either 3 pretty loose darts or 3 like slightly twist fit ones. You don't want it to be too tight just because this isn't the most powerful blaster. However, I have noticed that if you put like one really sort of tough dart in and like 2 looser ones, it'll only shoot the 2, and then what happens is sometimes it half sticks out like this, as you may have seen during that second firing demonstration, and then it just goes through the rotation like that. It doesn't really jam it because this has enough clearance to sort of bend the dart. As you can see, like when it goes around, it has enough clearance to work the dart through there. However, you know, it's kind of annoying and it won't shoot as intended, so I would keep an eye on that as you were loading it up, making sure the fit is correct, which can be kind of annoying in a clutch situation, so I wouldn't, you know, depend on this for my HVZ life if it was a week long. Might be a cool sidearm, however, I wouldn't use it as a primary just for that reason alone. Just to wrap up my thoughts, I guess the pros are you know, you get a shotgun pistol. What's more cool than that? It's really just fun to use in general, and it's probably one of the more fun mods I've done in the past few months. Even some of the other stuff, it's just really fun to play around with. Also, a free open source design, so you can, if you have a 3D printer or access to one, you could just download it and print it, which is really cool. Even at 100% filament, this is only like $1.50 worth of filament, so, you know, not too much of an initial investment there. If you have to pay for like a printing service, that obviously adds a lot to the cost, but if, you know, being that 3D printers are becoming more commonplace and sometimes people have them at schools or libraries or things like that, it's a lot more accessible than, you know, buying like a $40 or $45 version of this off of like eBay. It's also very easy to install. The only thing I had to do was trim that little post at the top, but other than that, I mean, I pretty much just printed it. I did some light sanding on the various barrels, and then I just slapped it in here and was good to go. I had to trim the shell a bit, but that only took like, you know, 10-15 minutes. So you'd also have to remove the air restrictor, but this one already had been removed, so it was a nice, easy drop-in kit for me. Going over the cons and sort of the only things I would really change about this sort of thing, in my opinion. So if you wanted to use this 24/7 and you wanted it to be very reliable, I would almost consider modifying this file slightly to maybe play with the spacing and see if you could fit brass barrels in here, because that would be pretty much the only way to get very consistent firing out of this. And then even use some of the other darts, like I found men gun darts and some of the aftermarket darts that have a little bit thicker foam have a very hard time shooting out of this consistently, whereas some of the squishier elite foams shoot much better. And this thing actually might work well with like sort of, you know, community darts and stuff like that, whereas some other blasters would have a very hard time with you know, darts that have been used repeatedly. As long as you're consistent with the 3, I think you would have a fairly decent time using this, because it tends to like the not as dense foams. But also playing into that, right, if you wanted to use like men gun darts, for example, is what I like to use. If you wanted to just buy like a bulk order of men gun darts, you'd probably have to brass barrel this to shoot at them very consistently, right? Because the problem with 3D printing in terms of barreling material is that it can be slightly inconsistent, especially when you have this many layers like this, right? So if you wanted to really, have that consistent inner diameter for a barrel, you'd really have to use something that's like a brass or another barreling material, but brass is probably the thinnest and easiest to shove into a turret like this. Other than that though, I think this would be a really, really awesome sidearm type blaster. You have some brassed barrels in here, you throw a slightly stronger spring in here, and I think you're ready to go. Like, this thing is awesome. I think it'd be a cool underbarrel because you have, those 6 shotgun type shots. The grouping, like I said, is fairly consistent, but again, depends on the darts. And then, I think it would work well in either scenario. Like I said, the only downside is the Cyclone shock's a little thick, so it might be hard to put on like a leg drop, like a drop leg type holster. It might be better off for like the side of a backpack or something is probably where I'll end up keeping this. I might actually repaint this, get rid of the Mega because it's not really a Mega blaster anymore. It would be really cool if you could have 2 of them, because then you'd have your double shotgun pistols. You'd have to put a string or something in here to allow you to like prime it, like you'd put this one on each slide, because this one be kind of difficult to, I know some people like to do. So when you have the 2 pistols, you try to put them like that, and then normally there's like a little hook on the slide, and you can pull them back. But I think if you had 2 strings, put a string in between the 2 slides rather, and then pull outwards and then shoot, and I think you'd be in good shape. 6 shots on each one. Yeah, I'll put a link to the download in the description. A shout out to the Open Flywheel project again. Those guys are awesome. They do all this stuff for free, and they have a variety of different flywheel cages, which I plan to use in the future. So shout out to those guys for making some awesome free products. And like I said, it's open source too, so I might actually go in and make the brass barreled version of this just for fun, because I'm in love with how this thing shoots. Sorry for rambling a bit at the end, but if you enjoyed watching this... Sorry for rambling on at the end, but the TLDR is that this thing is awesome, and if you have access to a printer, I would print one immediately and have some fun with it. Anyway guys, as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.